Minnesota has a little bit of controversy. So Rudy Gobert not only punched Kyle Anderson in the middle of their win before they came back to beat the New Orleans Pelicans, make themselves the A seed in this upcoming playoff bracket, but also Rudy Gobert is then suspended. And if you watch the clip, you'll see Taurean Prince jump off the bench, not to break up and separate Kyle Anderson and Rudy Gobert. No, it's to shove Rudy Gobert away from the team. The first thought I had when I saw this clip was, number one, Rudy Gobert's teammates don't like him. They don't necessarily vibe. And then after the game, a Target Center arena worker caught a video where Kyle Anderson saying, "You gotta stop just babying Rudy Gobert. You have to pick either me or Rudy." And I kind of thought to myself, who would I rather have in my team? Rudy Gobert making 45 million or Kyle Anderson making 8? I had to think about that. But then there's another dimension to this. The Timberwolves now move into a playing game versus the Lakers without Rudy, the guy they gave 5 first-round picks and a center who might be better than him in 2 years for, and he's tanked all of his trade value this season. First off, where does Minnesota go from here? And was it the right decision to suspend Gobert because of how important he'll be in this upcoming playing game? JRey, I want to start with you first. Did the suspension make sense to you? Was it necessary or worth it for Minnesota?
It's probably worth it if your teammates don't like being on the court with him, then it's all the better to keep him off of it if your team chemistry isn't going to be there when you're fighting for quite literally your season in a playing game. So it's probably better if him off the court. And it's kind of sucky because when you acquire Rudy Gobert, you're expecting to get this superstar defensive player of the year. And you've quite literally gotten the opposite, a guy that hasn't been able to mesh with your team. And I've been one to say, it takes a while to get, accustomed to a new group. And I've been making excuses and excuses for the squad. But quite literally, it seems like the egg is broken here. And it's probably better off keeping Rudy Gobert away from the team, at least for this game, until some things get hashed out. And while I know that punch wasn't a swing to the face, it wasn't like Mike Tyson was throwing a haymaker at somebody or you just tapped the guy's shoulder. But still, anytime you see something like that in a huddle on the court, it's no good. It's terrible culture. No self-control there. Your season's on the line. You're playing for all these games matter for you. And, you're a veteran in the NBA. You've played in some big playoff games already, and that's what you're doing. So it's more a knock on who Rudy Gobert is as a teammate than it really is anybody else on the Timberwolves.
This goes so deep. I mean, it goes back to the trade, why they traded for him, last season during the playoffs against Dallas. They didn't have the interior defensive rim protection. And they thought to themselves, okay, so who can we go get to, protect our insides? Well, let's go get that 3-time defensive player of the year, Rudy Gobert. Now, the first mistake was the trade that they gave up, right? What was it? It was 4 first-round picks and then a swap too as well, and then a abundance
The
of
removable
players.
contracts.
Three players, yeah.
And I think you alluded to it. One of those guys ended up being one of John's favorite guys, Walker Kessler, who's and you probably want now more than Rudy Gobert. So it goes back to that. Then I just saw a stat today that apparently I don't know exactly the percentages, but I remember though without Rudy Gobert, I think they were at 60% winning. And with Rudy, I think it was like 46%, something like that. It just hasn't worked all season. I mean, John predicted them to be the number 1 seed. He saw something that he's trying to hide from it. And listen, you could see maybe where John was coming from. I don't know about number 1 seed, but definitely like, top 4, top 5 seed, 100%, right? And they barely finished 8th. The chemistry wasn't there all season. Cat missed a majority of the season, a lot of time. And even when he was on the court with Rudy Gobert, it didn't mesh well. They made the trade mid-season, or basically 3/4 of the way through the season, for Mike Conley, right? They got D'Lo out. They got Mike Conley, and was that it? Or they traded
that and Nickeil Alexander-Walker
that's going for LA right now? Bando.
Yeah,
right?
but he was in Utah, so they technically got Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Mike Conley for D'Angelo Russell.
I mean, first off, the punch wasn't even really a punch, guys. Like when you watch that, it was more like a kind of like an open hand shove. we've all probably heard the reports of what was said exactly. You got to grab a rebound. Why don't you block some shots? Then when Kyle Anderson said to him, what do you say? Shut the F up, you B word.
DCH.
It went back, and then that's where I guess Rudy Gobert drew the line and kind of shoved. I mean, because we all know Rudy Gobert is 7'1". He's got a long reach. If he wanted to punch him in the face, he was going to punch him in the face in that position right there. John asks us in the beginning, was this the right decision to suspend him? And I've heard both sides. I've heard the side of, well, it's the most pivotal game of the season. Why would you bench him? It's only going to cause more riff, making it a more of a bigger deal than what it really is. And I've heard the other side where it's, well, dude, they've got a better winning percentage without Rudy Gobert. So maybe they play better without Rudy. They were able to rally in that game against New Orleans and win the game.
Down by 12 when Gobert got ejected.
So they've shown they can do it now. I mean, we'll get into the Lakers and T-Wolves game, but John talked about the audio too, right? That was apparently leaked. Who was the guy that leaked that? I want to know.
The same guy that leaked the Draymond video, apparently, in Golden State back in October.
The Draymond video.
Unbelievable.
This guy's getting around. He's getting around. That right there was the real feelings that Kyle Anderson has towards Rudy Gobert. And John started this off by saying Rudy doesn't vibe with his teammates. His teammates don't like him. I think Rudy Gobert comes off as a very nice guy, right? Like you would say, he's got a big heart. He's almost too nice of a guy. That's why he's not looked at as the intimidator. When we talk intimidators, does anybody ever bring up Rudy Gobert?
No, that's why Draymond said he's a little on the soft side.
Yeah, and he's a 3-time defensive player of the year. That's why the biggest weakness of Rudy Gobert is what? Go attack him in his chest. Attack him in his chest. Because he doesn't like that when you consistently do it. You're going to be able to take advantage of him. So we heard from Kyle Anderson that audio, and that's what his real feelings were on Rudy Gobert. That's what, and I think that's kind of, I don't know if Rudy heard it after he apparently sent a text and apologized and tweeted out he apologized. I don't know if he heard that audio yet. But if he did, if I was Rudy, that would be it. Those are your true feelings, stuff that you wouldn't even say to my face. Yeah. Because nobody's around. Rudy's not there. Who's around? I don't know who's around. Nobody. Maybe he's just walking, or maybe his teammates are around. So you don't even know if that's how the entire team or a section of the team feels. It's too much. We found out Kyle Anderson's real feelings towards Rudy Gobert. And it is what it is. Some people just don't get along, and it's time to split. And John, you asked at the beginning, who would you rather have, Kyle Anderson for $8 million or Rudy for 45? I'll take Kyle Anderson.
Rudy Gobert's deficiencies, which you alluded to, defensively, there have been playoff series where if he gets attacked in the chest, he can be vulnerable. Is Rudy Gobert intimidating? Absolutely at the rim, right? I'm not going to throw some soft floater up. He's going to reject that. But Rudy Gobert not only has shortcomings offensively, like in a playoff game, not being able to score on Reggie Jackson in the post, but he also crumbles under pressure. In high leverage moments, he tenses up, and there's always been a rigidity, dropping very easy passes, not being able to communicate, just stay in check, under control. And we're seeing the same theme here. It's that every team that acquires Rudy Gobert realizes, hey, look, we can't win at the highest levels with him. Brad talked about it. The Timberwolves this year, 8-4 without Gobert, with a 118 offensive rating. The way they made the playoffs last year with Karl-Anthony Towns was supposed to lead to them building around Anthony Edwards, not building around Cat. But when you acquired Gobert, the whole point was making sure Cat could be fine on defense. And you say, well, Cat's got his issue, Rudy's got his issue. You mesh their two struts together, and bam, you got the best front court in the NBA. Except it's not NBA Jam. It's not 1993. 25 years ago, I think this could work. But to win at the highest levels today, you need to be able to guard in space, 25, 30 feet. Gobert's never played Golden State in the playoffs. Back in 2018, their first year making the playoffs with Gobert, he did. and they lost that series in 4 games. So it's been 6 years now. And I look at the Timberwolves and where they're headed. Suspending him was pointless because now you make this an even bigger deal and it's hard to move on from. But the reality is, the Rudy Gobert trade could go down as the worst in NBA history. And the reason why is because you have Anthony Edwards. There's so much on the line to build around a star player. We often forget you have to earn your right to keep them. And for Minnesota to give up all of your first-round picks that you can possibly move this offseason, committing to a 31-year-old center when you already have another one that's set to make $200+ million, we don't know if he can win on a championship team as one of the 2 best players. It leads you to this postseason where Tim Connolly, the guy that made this trade, he his franchise. Pardon my French.
Well, John, that's where I'm gonna stop you there.
Let's go, John.
He's he's got a chance to redeem himself because he's got 2 assets that are, one I would say is much more valuable in Cat, right? And he's got Rudy still. Now, is he going to get the same or more value for Rudy Gobert that he gave up? No. But he can get something, right? He can get something because that's all you really need at this point, because keeping him is not going to help your team. So you have to get rid of him, addition by subtraction, right? Talked about that with Russell Westbrook. Tell me that's not working out now.
They didn't give 5 firsts for Russell, though.
I understand that. But so addition by subtraction, you have to at this point. And then Cat, you can get a pretty good load for Cat. I don't know, maybe 2 first-rounders, maybe 3.
Yep.
So you have 2 guys that you can explore options, and I think they will 100% in the offseason explore those 2 options. I honestly believe there's a massive chance, more than 50% chance, that both Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns are not Minnesota Timberwolves next year. I do think that. Both.
Not just one.
Well, I think the clock is ticking on Cat too. I mean, the injuries as well, and you guys even alluding to from the beginning of the season, you guys have been saying you guys had questions about Karl-Anthony Towns and whether or not he can be a leader on a championship team. So if he's not that leader, is he a B? Do you guys see him at least as a B behind Anthony Edwards?
I think John is much more harder on Cat than I am. I still think Cat is
top 30 player.
No, I'm talking centers at his position. I think he's still top 5 for it, maybe just out 4 or 5.
Yeah,
you know,
he
he's
definitely
in
is
there.
top 5.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This guy can get at his best. He can give you 27 and 12.
The reason I'm hard is defense.
He does lack on the defense. I mean, for being 7'1", 7'2", he lacks as a rim protector, and he needs.
It's true. At 7 feet, he actually had a great defensive game versus the Pelicans for his standards.
He can strum it up when he, but it's
maybe
it's more the lack of motor. You know what Jimmy called him out for? Jimmy called him out for he didn't have that edge to him.
True. For where the Timberwolves have wanted to go in the postseason, which is second round, conference finals, NBA finals, your limitation of not guarding space will haunt you. And so when you have a center on your team in the NBA, more than ever before, they get exploited in space because a drop back big, that's what Cat has usually been, is gonna get cooked in spread pick and roll. Last year, the Timberwolves changed their entire defense to have Cat hedging ball screens. What that led to was no rim protection at all. So you're going to have to give up one of those 2 things, and that's why a player like Bam, Draymond Green, Jaren Jackson is so beneficial.